Hi and welcome to SMEbiztv, the show that brings you buy-side business strategies for today's SME.
I'm your host Tanner, and this is my lovely wife Ellen. We've got an amazing show lined up for you today. Today we've got a guest, Santosh Hejmadi, who's a friend of ours. He's also one of the most preeminent branding experts here around the Middle Eastern region. He's worked with the branding of Jebel Ali Free Zone. He's worked with Tecom, which is the media city area of Dubai. But also something that most of you will recognize, even if you're not living in the UAE, is the Definitely Dubai brand. It was actually Santosh's brainchild. He's the one that came up with the entire brand itself. So welcome to the show, Santosh.
Thank you very much, Tanner. Ellen?
We're super excited to have you here. As a brand master or brand expert, we come across a lot of questions, can you create the brand for us? And then they mean, okay, they just want a logo done. Can you explain more the process of branding, what it is really?
Mm-hmm. May I start with what's a brand first?
Absolutely.
Because it's quite a misunderstood term, often amongst even larger corporations. But a brand is actually quite simply a promise. So whether you have a product or you have a service, it's what you promise the customer. And it's that brand promise that you've got to live up to, whether you are an SME or whether you are a conglomerate. And the process of creating this promise is called branding and developing it. And the elements of a brand, you probably come across this yourself. Clients probably ask for a logo when they actually when they talk branding, they say, can you design a logo? Can you make me a logo? It's much more than that. It actually, the promise could be in the form of a brand name. It could be in the form of a visual, which is typically an identity, which could be a logo, or it could be like the Mercedes symbol, right? Or the Adidas swoosh. And this entire process of putting the name, the visual identity that connotes and communicates the promise of the brand or service, that whole process is actually called branding. And so the next time client says, I want to do a branding exercise, it's very useful to extract from the client what exactly is required, because the process that you go through, whether it's for a small company, for a product or a service, or whether it is for, as I said, for a conglomerate, is pretty much the same.
Now, there's in our line of business, we do meet a lot of clients that do come to us, and some of them actually don't have a brand at all. They don't have a logo. They're just a startup, because we have multiple types of companies. So some already have an existing brand. They just want to maybe redefine or change the way the logo looks. And then some of these guys are out there. They're just startups. They just got their business for the first time, registered it, and they're just trying to associate with what their brand is. So in our world, we sort of create a naming process and then a brand process. I mean, these are lengthy processes for us, but there is a bit of a misconception sometimes that the startups think, hey, just give me a logo, that's my brand, and there's no further thought process into that.
Exactly. So I think what's very, very important is, again, when you say the whole process of branding, what you're actually doing is you're differentiating your product and your service from that of competition. How do you want yourself to be remembered in that crowded marketplace out there from competition, so that the next time when you're buying the product or a service, the name or the brand or the image that should come to the top of your mind is that of your clients, right? I mean, take for example, if you're competing with in the space of, and I give this example quite often, in the space of rent-a-car, you probably know this old story where Avis was the #1 car rental agency, and I'm talking about a couple of years back, but they're pretty much still very strong out there globally. Hertz was the global leader, and Avis came along and said, we try harder. And the immediate benefit that they communicated to the customer was, hey, you know what, maybe I should go with these guys because they might look after me better, they might give me a better car, give me a better rate, and so on. The same thing exists with the pizzas, for example, the pizza delivery. Someone says, I guarantee you delivery in 20 minutes, otherwise you don't pay. versus someone who you might get the most fancy pizza and you're there forever waiting at the table. So it's these promises that differentiate you from the competition. And guess what? Today technology has made it so easy for you to go and acquire a product which can easily compete with the market leader. We see this in iPhones today and Samsungs.
Yeah. Or the apps.
Or the apps. They're so similar. But what is that edge that Apple has over competition? That's the differentiator. And once you create that differentiation, you've got to live up to it. Otherwise, there's going to be an alienation and you're going to lose a customer. And one lost customer is bad news because he or she is going to talk badly about that product.
Now, I was just kind of thinking, because you mentioned about competition, and you know, most of our business is coming from SMEs, you know, sort of up to that 100 million dirham or $30 million a year kind of companies. But how can they compete with the ginormous companies that are out there? We've heard that, you know, okay, SMEs are more flexible, they can make decisions faster, they can change their business model around and so on, but can they deliver the service as well and deliver that brand promise? But how can they compete? Is it just as simple as changing that brand around, or there's got to be something behind that, isn't there?
Yes. Let me actually give you, these are examples that I've been involved while I was in the advertising industry, where I've handled large multinationals and I've also worked with SMEs like yourselves. The major difference I found was that once the leader of or the chairman or the managing director of an SME understood what was required, he put his full weight behind it, and the decision making process was much faster than that typically in a conglomerate, because they have their aversion to risk, I suppose, is not, their appetite is not as high as that for SMEs. So when they launch a new product or a new brand, they're much slower to decide. But the process, like I mentioned earlier, is the exact same. So if the marketing director of a large conglomerate or multinational is given the responsibility to launch a new brand, and you have the head of an SME in the same position, the chances are that you'll be able to come up with a brand that's equally promising, equally strong, that differentiates his product, versus the decision-making process of the person, of the marketing director. Chances are that the SME will be able to do it equally well and probably faster. What's the key to this whole thing really is the ability for both the SME and the agency that is developing the brand, whether it's a web agency or whether it's a design agency, to be able to understand the customer. That is the key. Now, again, I've found with SMEs, quite often because of their size, they know their customers really well. Whereas on the other side of the coin, you have the larger companies which do a lot of research, which do a lot of, which do buy reports and so on. But they are not necessarily as closely clued in with the customer, as closely as perhaps the SME. And I've seen that happen, where when we went through the branding process, he sat down and he said, ask me the questions, I'll tell you, because I've walked the floor. I've lived it, I've breathed my store.
Now, you've shown us some examples in the past, because you've also helped mentor us through one of our new business ideas that we came up with your help. But you showed us some really interesting branding campaigns, or campaigns that have sort of run on the back of a new brand. And I think, do you have any really cool examples that we can actually tell people, here's a great example of a fantastic brand doing the right thing in the market? Maybe we could just focus on one case, the one thing that you've done, perhaps either yourself or maybe you've shown us as well, because you've shown us some really cool stuff, and maybe we could share it with our audience.
Okay. Let me stick to probably some of the areas that I've been working quite a bit more in more recent times, which is the area of tourism. The example I'm going to give you is international. It is there are two examples I'd like to give you, where we're talking about how they reach the consumer very quickly. One is Malaysia and the other is India. Let me start with India. Now, India has always been a fascinating destination for several people, whether it's for health or whether it's or to go to Goa or the beaches, or just to go to a busy, bustling city like Mumbai.
Or yoga.
Yeah.
Or yoga.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Weren't you there recently?
I did go
Yeah.
to yoga. I went
Yeah.
down to Rishikesh up north. So.
Correct. So and then there are the backpackers.
Yeah.
So the positioning. I must also tell you one other element, very crucial element of branding, which I should have referred to earlier, and that's called positioning. Because when I said how do you differentiate yourself from the pack, it's all about positioning your product or your service in the mind of the consumer. And I always give this example of if you're on a ladder and there are people above you and you want to get to the top of that ladder, what do? Well, one is to push somebody out and then it might get into trouble. The other is to go and get yourself a new ladder and go and sit right on top of that and nobody can touch you. So India did pretty much that when they said you were competing with the likes of France, the US, the UK, in Europe as destinations, and in the Far East, or even places like Mauritius or Seychelles. And what they did was they positioned it with a line which simply said "Incredible India," and that one sentence or those two words are so strong because they bring to bear the differentiation of India in every respect. So whether it is for relaxation or for health or yoga, or it's the beaches, or it's shopping, or it's the exotic or spices, everything about it was incredible. Even the chaos.
Yeah, it's interesting
incredible.
with the chaos.
Yeah.
I haven't
Very
been to India
interesting.
yet, but I think I might make my trip very soon. Ellen's
Right.
been there for, now you're going for something else as well, so.
The other example, if I may, is Malaysia. Now, the beauty of Malaysia, and I think both of you have been there, is the fact that there are so many Asian cultures. And when you talk about a destination and tourism, basically there are a couple of differentiators for a brand, for the destination. And one has got to do with what is called as discovery. So you go and you discover a place, and that's what Incredible India tries to do. Or it's affinity, where you relate to the people and you relate to the cultures. And that's what Malaysia did, which said truly Asia.
Yeah.
And the whole campaign was around, and the branding was around truly Asia. So these are two really good examples in the area of tourism, which differentiates the brand from the competition.
So I have a question. Now, obviously, they used one word like Incredible India or Truly Asia, so one word or a line. How important is a tagline for your logo and your brand?
Right. Now, again, the word tagline, positioning statement, these are all manifestations of the marketers, or marketeers, for me. Whether it's two words or a sentence, Jumeirah does it very well in this part of the world, which says "stay different." So there you go, just two words, "stay different." It is important because to those who have not understood the word, the brand,
your name.
or the logo, the name, or the logo, the visual identity, they understand it through the sentence or through a couple of words. So it is, I think, very important. But it's not it is not mandatory. For instance, again, I'd like to refer to the tourism brand in Dubai, which is definitely Dubai. I was asked during the process, how about a tagline, or how about a positioning statement? Definitely Dubai says it all.
Yeah, exactly. We
It
don't
sounds
need
like a
anything more.
statement. Yeah, it is a statement.
It is a statement by itself. So whether it is for business or tourism, for tourism, it's different. It's your search for this destination has ended. It's definitely Dubai.
There you are. Yeah.
There you are. So, but it's important, and if you can get it right, and again I'll give you this example which I talked about earlier, which is we try harder. it says so much.
Yeah.
So
Now there's for one of the naming process situations we run into in the Middle East is there's a lot of family-owned companies that have their name behind the family, so-and-so and sons, but the brand isn't internationally recognized. I find this happens a lot in Saudi, for example. The person takes their name on as a brand, or they have an acronym, you know, TK Enterprise, and then you'll say, well, what's the TK stand for? Well, it's Tanner Co. Carson. And so I remember once we were in the brand makers workshop with you, and you thought, ugh, you know, palm to face, why are people doing acronyms of their own names? Can you give us any sort of insights on if someone is going to name a business or if they're going to rebrand a business? Should it still be based on a family name? Because you've got some amazing strong brands like Johnson & Johnson, let's say, but they don't have the same kind of clout out here. They don't have the same kind of drive. So, what do you say to people that have decided to name their company after their acronym of their names, for example?
I'll give an example. When I was in the advertising industry in India, there is, just like the family businesses here, there are quite a few family businesses in India, and there is a company in India called TTK, which actually stands for TT Krishnamachari and Sons, but we won't go there. It's a long name. But they stood for prestige. They stood for Woodwards, which your mother and my mother would relate to, because that was the gripe water that was given to the kids. It was anise oil, it was water. But when we got into the branding, we did the entire rebranding for TTK. We actually used the acronym in a different way. We said it's a product from the TTK group or a TTK product. Now, what we did there was we leveraged off the benefits of the TTK house, or the house of TTK being known to the consumer. But to a younger consumer, it would make a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you talk prestige, which is a brand which is known today, the fact that it came from the house of TTK made that the credibility of that product much stronger. So I would say that route has worked for so many family brands all over the world, that you can actually go take that route. But guess what? What is very important here is actually, the end of the day, is the product that you're buying. I'm buying this product, and why am I buying this? Because of it's what I call as there are two types of differentiators. There are the factual ones, which are the rational ones, and then there's the emotional ones. So the fact that it's made out of steel and it glistens and gleams and it's powder coated or whatever are the rational decisions. But there's an equally strong decision making factor, which is that it's coming from a renowned house. The two together work very well. And I say that would be my recommendation, that if there is a family-owned business in this part of the world, whether it's in Saudi or in Qatar or in Dubai, make use of it, because it needn't be in your face. It could be subtle. The products could also be visual, like if a particular branded, if a particular family business is known for a particular visual identity, make use of that.
So I just wanted to find out, because right now, so this is sort of the good versus evil, you've got the dark side, the force kind of thing. I'm a bit geeky that way, but there's currently what's happening in the world is there's a love of mobile phones. And right now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but right now you've got Apple with its iPhone, and you've got Samsung with its Galaxy S3, I think is the newest one out there. And they're having this monster battle. And they're literally fighting over territories, entire continents. And do you have any insights on, I mean, we're not promoting necessarily, but we're iPhone fans. We're completely maxed out at our house with everything Apple. However, but we are sort of in love with the brand itself. We're in love with the sex appeal of the white earbuds and the cool factor of Apple products. And of course, millions are, because right now they're lined up all over the place trying to get phones, and there's back orders for iPhones.
Big followers of iPhone.
But so you've got this monster, colossal battle happening right now in the world. What are your thoughts on this? So who's winning? Why is Apple winning? They are the largest company in the world right now as far as revenue on the market, on the stock markets. What do you think of that, and where do you think that's all coming from?
Okay, it's interesting you should ask this question, because like you, perhaps I'm called a geek. As far when it comes to phones, you said you were a lover of iPhones. and Apple technology. So am I. Having said that, I also have Samsung. I have an Android phone, I have a Windows phone, and I have a Chinese tri-band phone that works, sorry, 3-SIM phone that works, I don't know on what.
Something.
But the reason it works, the reason I went into this was, again, it's the brand promise. Apple, for its sheer ease of use and intuitive, it is amazingly intuitive. When you start using whether it's an iPad or whether it's the iPhone, irrespective of which model it is, it's very fundamental in the way it talks to a consumer and it interacts with the consumer. Samsung was nowhere there a couple of years ago. But having said that, their technology is amazing. And they have grown in leaps and bounds, and the Galaxy machine is also phenomenal. Now, why do I use a Windows system? Because in some of the work that I do, particularly with the World Bank, it's all Windows based at the moment. So it's more out of necessity. So you see where I'm coming from. It's what is the promise that it delivers to me as a consumer. When it comes to just sheer ease of use, Apple and Samsung are great. But I still think that technologically, Samsung is perhaps equally or maybe more advanced than Apple. But it's the packaging of Apple, it's the sex appeal of Apple. And I think the personal charisma of the late Steve Jobs, whenever he launched a product, the whole world was just waiting with bated breath to see what he's going to talk about.
It's a timeout. Everybody's watching.
Everybody's watching, and then they make a beeline, as you said, to the store to be the first to pick it up. So I want that product is what it's all about.
So that's the branding working for
That's
you.
the brand working for you.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Apple is on a massive scale, and most of the people watching the show here are SMEs. So, if they're starting a new company or they already have an existing company, what advice would you give them to get their branding straight so they can get started on getting their branding process correct?
Yeah. What I would say is think big, but take baby steps. Because the process of branding is expensive today, particularly when it comes to communicating, whether it's using the print medium or the electronic medium. It is expensive, and you've got to sustain the message. When there's so much noise out there, you cannot afford to make a big blip and then go quiet. So what I would say is think big. If you've got a big budget, bravo. If you've got a limited budget, use it wisely. Use it. Don't take 15 ads which are so small that get lost in, say, the local news media. Use that budget creatively. That's again the process of branding. How creative can the message be to communicate the fact that my product is different from yours? Now, those baby steps, and they should be sustained. So if you want to sustain it for 1 year or 6 months and then scale it down a bit and then again pick it up, that's the way to do it. So they should not try and necessarily take out billboards which are, the huge billboards which are on Sheikh Zayed Road, because people just go by it, see it once and that's it. But when push comes to shove, what would you go and buy? You'd go and buy Apple, or you'd go check out a Samsung. There are, and I was not being facetious when I said I've got a 3-SIM phone from China. That little piece has got a TV in it, it's got a radio, you can actually hand write, and it's got the switch on phone, the slide on phone. Technology allows you to do all that. I bought it because I travel, and here was one phone that I could stick in my Dubai number, my Dubai numbers if you like, or and the local number. Now, iPhone doesn't have a 2-SIM phone yet.
Yes.
But Samsung had, and Samsung has. So if your need is to have more than one SIM, you go for the product differentiation. So and then within that you say Samsung technology. But if you are in the process of launching another phone as an SME, then you must decide what is it that you want to be known for, and then stick with that message and sustain it.
I guess also it's important with knowing your audience. Like you said, a lot of the SMEs do know, but I'm sure there's also some that don't know who really are their target audience. So I guess potentially knowing who they are so you can target the marketing better as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the critical activities that I do when I work on a branding exercise with the client is to wipe the table clean, the slate clean, and say, let's start from the beginning. Who buys your product? Who does not buy your product? Why do they buy your product? Why do they not buy your product? Who is your competition? What is your price point? Where is your product available? So you have to understand the consumer, their reasons to buy that product. Because it's nice to see television commercials and read about and read the ads. But do you really remember all the brands? You don't. It's only when, let's say, again, I'll give you another example, which is the white goods industry. When your fridge breaks down and you need to go and buy a fridge, you suddenly start seeing fridges and the brands of fridges in your friend's house, or commercials that are running on television. And that's when the decision-making process should be nabbed right there. And if you're not there at that point in time, then you can forget it. You've lost the brand. You've lost the customer. So even the timing of your communications is very, very important. That's probably one of the reasons, and it's not rocket science, that during the festival season, whether it's here or any part of the world, whether it's Christmas or Eid, there's a huge amount of buying during that time. So you wonder, what should I get this person? He's got everything. Or I know he had asked me for a watch, and then you start looking for the watch brands. So understanding the consumer, their behavior, their spend, the process, the time they take. There are a lot of people who take a very long time to actually decide. And having said that, there are a lot of people who just walk into a store, pick it up, and then they're out of there. Now guess what the person who's a very quick decision maker would buy? The top of mind brand. So he would just walk in there and buy a latest whatever watch, that he knows of at that point in time.
Yeah.
Now, I have one last question after this. We're going to run out of time, but I have one last question, and it's very important. We went into a couple of people over the last year, I suppose. They've come to us and said, look, I was doing really well. My company was doing really well, but for some reason we lost a lot of business in that country or this happened. Is there any sort of advice that you can give to companies? Maybe it's relationship management, or are they maybe looking to rebrand or relaunch something? Can you give any quick insights on what do you think somebody should do if they're just not performing as they used to, perhaps? Maybe the market went down after 2009, or they did something to annoy the market and they've lost some market share. What can they do? Like, I'm thinking a big brand, of course, is RIM with the BlackBerry and the service and so on with their outages. But as a Canadian, so they're a Canadian brand, however, and you yourself as well. But what about an SME? Because relationships are obviously where the revenue really is. How can some people come back into a market, or what can they do in terms of a branding perspective?
I think, let me answer that question with an example. There's a company very well known today in the world. It's called Wipro, primarily in the IT industry. And their line used to be close to the customer. Their positioning was close to the customer. Again, that says it all. I would advise the SME, if he's having an issue, in fact at any time, but particularly if he's having an issue in a particular market, is to go to that customer, get close to that customer, have the operational people as well as himself as the owner of the business do a market visit, talk to people, get the pulse of why is it that the sales have dropped. Was there a new product that was launched? Was there a new brand that was launched? And I'm making the difference because the product would be maybe something that's just cheaper but does the same function. So in hard times, when you want it's just a question of functionality, you probably would go and say, okay, fine, I'll buy a cheaper product. Doesn't matter, I'll wait and buy the bigger brand later. So I think I call it waterfront marketing, where you actually go down to the waterfront, look for yourself what is right, what is working, what is not working, and why. And again, going back to the SME's strength, is the decision-making process for an SME is so much quicker and direct that he probably will be able to get back on his feet much quicker than his competitor, a larger competitor. So if that sort of answers your question, which is go down to the market, find out what's right, what's wrong. Again, I think constant feedback is another very, very important thing. It shouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction after something has happened. You should be able to see the writing on the wall, how consumers are changing, their tastes are changing, what's happening in the marketplace. And it's easy to do it. You just have to empower your sales and marketing force to do that. And the feedback mechanisms, the processes to capture this. And that's something that today, using the net, using the web, and you should be able to do that very easily, is to actually keep track of consumers and get feedback and polls.
Well, one of our earlier episodes, if you recall, we had a survey tool that we ranked a little bit called Survey Expression, and we'll refer you guys to that link as well. So that's a good way to survey the market consistently, communicate. And as our one of our business mentors and friend Tina Olivero, the owner of Oil and Gas Magazine, she always says everything starts with a conversation. So we believe in that. Well, thank you very much, Santosh. We know you're an extremely busy guy. You're flying all over the world these days. We really appreciate the time you spent with us. And if as we continue with our show, we're probably going to pick your brain some more, because branding is an issue that never has to stop. Obviously, it's constantly evolving.
It is constantly evolving, and I think again, in most economies, SMEs form the chunk of the business. So I know you're positioning yourself, and you have positioned yourselves in that space, and I think that's very smart. And I think the SMEs in this region and elsewhere would really benefit from other mentors and professionals to help them in their businesses.
Well, thank you so much, Santosh. That was really, really a lot of valuable information. Now, we will put all the links for Santosh and how to get in touch with him just below the video, in case you want to get in touch.
And check out the Definitely Dubai logo and brand concept, because this is the man that was behind that as well. And
there's the new website going to be launched very shortly. I think people will love it.
What's the website? Do you know the URL?
It's going to be announced. It's basically the same, definitelydubai.com. But the entire again, this is product evolution and branding evolution. We've restructured the entire web process, the website, the interactivity. So by GITEX time, probably it will be launched at the GITEX
right?
in a couple of weeks.
Probably November.
Yeah, we'll put that information on the site as well. And if you need any details, if you can't get a hold of Santosh somehow on the web or whatever it is, come to us. We'll see if we can help your business grow as well with Santosh's experience. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you in the next segment.
Thank you very much for having me. All the best. Thank you.
In today's SME Lens moment, we're going to talk about how we can help you choose a branding agency or a branding consultant.
Now, it's really important. There's a lot of different criteria to take into consideration at the moment, but we're going to give you a couple of insights, and we hope that it'll help you make the right choice. So to start off with, I think one of the really big important criteria is that you should treat the choosing of the branding agency as if it's like an interview, perhaps that you're hiring them as an employer for that time being, because they are going to be working on something, probably one of the most important things for your company. So when you get into looking for branding agencies, maybe see more than one or two, and set up a certain number of questions. For example, you should look at it in the sense that they should be asking you things like, what's your market? Who are your competitors? What's your competitive market like? What's the pricing around? And so on. They should really try to understand your business. At least that's what I think is really important.
And another thing is that make sure that you look at what they've done before. What companies have they been working with? Are they successful? Have they done a good job? They will have a portfolio of work they've already done before. Even if you can even do testimonials, see what other people are saying, and actually go and check with those people, because you will be spending a lot of time with those people and that company or consultant, and you're also going to be spending a lot of money with them. So you want to be sure that you get your money's worth, well worth spent.
Yeah, and also speaking about a lot of money, you know, this is kind of a weird area because we get asked this question all the time. Is like, well, how much should I pay for branding? Because it seems a bit like an aesthetic value. And the real question I think people should be asking is that how much is it worth to you? Big corporates, you know, they're sitting there spending millions and millions of dollars to get this brand, and it's, for example, like Nike says, just do it. Did they spend millions of dollars developing that kind of brand and so on? But the thing is that the branding agency that goes in should be spending a lot of time with you, your staff, if you have staff, and so on. So they should really be looking at who you are, what your objectives are, and so on. Because at the end of the day, as Santosh told us, that a brand isn't simply a logo, because anyone can sort of come up with something creative there. It's about a brand. It's a promise that you make to the market, and you know, it defines your mission and your goals as a company. Something that people can really connect with. Your staff should be able to connect to it, and it should really speak volumes for the vision of your company. So
yeah, so if you have a limited budget, which a lot of SMEs have, just do baby steps, as Santosh also said. Take one small piece at a time, and work with the budget that you have, and try and make the best out of it.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good idea. So,
that's a great idea. Well, listen, thanks very much for tuning in this time, and we hope to see you at the next SME Biz TV.
Yes, bye. See you next time.
Bye for now.